Hello, my name is Professor Adrian Little. I'm the Vice-Chancellor International at the University of Melbourne, and I'm here to discuss the Fulbright Commission Awards. I'm pleased to be joined by Professor Andrew Walter from the School of Social and Political Sciences, and Andrew is the recipient of one of the awards for this year. So, Andrew, perhaps you could start off by telling us where you're going to go in the US and when you hope to go.
Yeah, thanks very much, Adrian. So I've got a Fulbright Senior Scholar Award, and the Fulbright scheme takes a number of people from students, master's students, through to full professors such as myself to the United States, and from the United States back to Australia, of course, as well. So it's a bilateral exchange program. I'll be going to the School of International Service at American University in Washington, D.C. for about 4 months from mid-August this year, all going well.
And I understand you've been dealing with the challenges of travel under COVID-19.
Yeah.
How's that been?
Fulbright is taking people from Australia to the United States over this year. So effectively the program runs from mid-year through to mid-year. So all the Fulbright scholars from 21 to 2022 can go up to, I think, the end of May 2022. But I'm on sabbatical this semester. So all going well. Fulbright will, within a couple of weeks, book tickets for me and my partner to go to Washington for 4 months.
And likewise, we're hoping to welcome Fulbright scholars to Australia again from next year. So that's very encouraging. So perhaps you could tell us a little bit about your work, and in particular, I understand that this research is part of an Australian Research Council grant. If you could tell us how the Fulbright Award will fit into that.
Yeah, so look, America's and Washington, D.C. is always a great city to go to for research. Obviously, it's the capital of the United States and where a lot of important policy doesn't get made as well as gets made, and gets made in ways that obviously reverberate in important ways around the world, not least for countries like Australia, which have often historically either taken the lead of the United States in crucial policy areas or been substantially affected by policy decisions in Washington, D.C. So that's, I guess, the first reason. The second is, as you said, this is part of an ARC-funded project, the Australian Research Council discovery grant that I have with a lawyer from Melbourne, Tanya Voon in the law department, and Phil McCalman, an international economist from the Faculty of Business and Economics, along with a colleague in economics at Monash. We are looking at the growing politicization and what in international relations terms we would call the securitization of inward foreign direct investment over the past years, particularly prominent in places like Australia and the United States, associated with the emergence of concerns about so-called critical infrastructure, critical technologies, state-owned enterprises, most notably from countries like China, though not only China, that has sharply changed the policy trajectory in countries like the United States, Australia, Western Europe over the past few years. So we're looking at the causes, nature and consequences of that phenomenon across the world. But as I said, the United States is a crucial case to understand, and I'm personally responsible for that as part of the project. So that's why in particular I asked through the Fulbright scheme to go to Washington, D.C. To conduct that research.
And why did you decide to go with the Fulbright Commission? I understand that, ARC grants don't always pay the full costs of research, so why did you think of Fulbright to augment?
So I wanted to go to Washington, D.C. I wasn't part of the original ARC grant, and so to do that sort of thing you have to specify the costs to the ARC. So I didn't do that. So therefore, in order to finance this, I started to look around. I looked at a few fellowships attached to local Washington, D.C. based institutions, but they didn't sort of fit the timing and they were very uncertain because of the pandemic. But the Fulbright scheme was still up and running, so I applied a year or so ago, and was lucky enough to get that. So the Fulbright scheme is very attractive, not only because of because it's continuing through the pandemic, and because it attaches an individual student, scholar, researcher to an individual institution. It also opens up a really wide network, as well as a whole lot of possibilities that if I was self-funded or perhaps attached to a particular institution in Washington, D.C., I wouldn't have access to. So already the Fulbright scheme, for example, has opened up doors to the Fulbrighter network, and there are many Fulbrighters in the United States government. It's not just the funding and the actual fellowship in a particular institution. It's a really broad scheme that offers fantastic opportunities to, I think, anyone who's lucky enough to get one.
Great. And why did you choose American University? Are there historical connections there, or why was it the right academic institution for you to travel to?
So there's a few reasons. One, firstly, there's the School of International Service is really a sort of international relations public policy school that's part of American University in Washington, D.C. So it's got some really good, very prominent, it's been building up in recent years, and it's now I think, historically, American University wouldn't have been the obvious choice compared to others like Georgetown and George Washington University, or indeed some of the big policy think tanks like Brookings and so on, or the Peterson Institute for International Economics. But AU has been building up, and in particular, the School of International Services made some fantastic hires in the past decade or so. I happen to know and have done research with a couple of people there, Professors Miles Carler and Randy Henning. I also know Amitav Acharya there, and a number of other people. So I happen also to be lucky enough to have some personal contacts. They range right across the board in terms of international relations, public policy, political economy and security. So there's a whole bunch of really good colleagues. And of course, finally, it's really well connected with the Washington, D.C. policy network, and with government. So it's just a great place to be. We also, in the Faculty of Arts and social and political sciences in particular, have a dual degree arrangement with American University's international relations program. So I hope also, on the side, in effect, to assist in sort of consolidating that relationship as well, and perhaps extending the number of our students who go to the School of International Service and vice versa.
Yeah, so it's a really good example, I guess, of how we can connect research and teaching enterprises.
Yeah, I think so. And there are, there's a whole lot of potential too for research collaboration with various of the people involved in the School of International Service as well.
And indeed, we've hosted Miles Carler here previously.
Yeah, we have. So Miles was a distinguished visiting fellow probably 4 or 5 years back now. And Randy Henning too came to the University of Melbourne for about 2 months to conduct some joint research that we were doing on emerging countries and global financial governance. So this research isn't entirely new. It's in a sort of broader, longer context of research that I've been doing, but also in part with them on the governance of global capital flows.
And lastly, then, how would you like the relationship to develop after your travel on the Fulbright Award?
Obviously, we're going to have to keep a close eye on U.S. policy over the next few years as we explore the research in this grant. it's a very fast-moving policy area. The fluidity and indeed the rupture, in a way, in relations between China and the West, but most notably between China, the United States, and with Australia as well. It's a very fast-moving environment, so we're going to have to keep a close eye on that. The shift from the Trump to the Biden administration too is really important, and we're still in the early days of that transition. So how US-China relations and the economic dimensions of that relationship play out over the next few years are going to be really important for us. We're building a big data set as well on foreign investment screening policy. A global data set. So I will be hoping to build relationships with people, not just in American University, but also in think tanks in Washington, D.C., talking to the State Department, the Treasury, to the Critical Infrastructure Security Agency and people like that. So in a sense, part of what I'll be doing is network building, and I hope that those will continue well beyond this particular fellowship, and indeed well beyond even the ARC project.
Well, excellent. Thank you again, and congratulations for winning such a prestigious award, and we look forward to hearing more about it on your return. And I would just finish off by saying that the university is particularly keen to encourage students and academic staff to pursue the kinds of opportunities that the Fulbright Commission allows. And for further information on Fulbright schemes, you can check out the Fulbright website, and also we have a dedicated site on the university scholarships website that people can also look at for more information. So thank you very much.